Folks, I just want to give you a bit of a thumbs up on where I'm heading today, okay? We're going to start off deep, but I want to reassure you that I'm going to climb out of that into something positive. And then within that whole framework that I'm picking up on, there is one aspect of that whole picture that I want to talk about today. But I'm going to plow in deep to get us going. All right. I asked you how you are doing. Okay. It's likely that for many of you, you probably have very few people that you could actually go to tell them honestly how you're doing. And I think it would be fair to say that probably for majority of you here today, that you know what it's like to struggle. You know what it's like to have pain in your life and your experiences. And for some of you here today, probably you're the only person who understands the depth to which you've hurt in life. And all of us, to some extent, have those experiences. I'd probably be fair to say that probably some of you here today have been through desperately dark seasons in your life where you wished you weren't alive, where terrible things happened. You may still bear some of the scars and pain in your life from circumstances that came your way that you had no control over. And yet we don't often find a place to even admit to those things. But do you know, folks, the wonderful thing in the Bible is that the Bible is a book that is extremely open and honest. And you know, I'm just going to run through a few stories with you. I've come to the conclusion, and this is just for my own life, and I hope we embrace it as a church. I believe, judging by the evidence that the Bible gives, that God values honesty above performance. Right? We should be able to be honest about what we're facing in life and not have to perform. So if you've struggled in your life, if you've had a lot of pain and disappointment and sorrow, maybe no one else knows the depth to which you've hurt, I want to encourage you by telling you this morning, you are not alone. And I want you to listen to these individuals who are heroes in the Bible. And I've pulled out some of their confessions, and I'm going to go through them with you. But wonderfully this morning, I was so encouraged by Joe's welcome this morning. He quoted from Lamentations, spoken by Jeremiah. We're going to have a bit of a look at Jeremiah. In the midst of a hopeless situation, he spoke the words that Joe spoke about. The songs Lorraine chose this morning were just balm to the soul because they were honest. They all spoke about the hardships and about when things come our way and I won't be overwhelmed and God will be faithful. It's honestly admitting to the struggles we face in life, but along with that, we have the faithfulness of God. So these people that we hold up as heroes in the Bible, I'm going to just put them up and we'll have a look at them one at a time, okay? Have a look at this first one, Moses. These are the words of Moses at one point in his life. I cannot carry all these people by myself. If this is how you're going to treat me, please go ahead and kill me. That was Moses. Have a look at the next one, Elijah. Sorry, I'm being triggered. I've had enough, Lord. Take my life. I'm no better than my ancestors. Listen to Job. Why did I not perish at birth and die as I came from the womb? Jonah. Now, Lord, take away my life. Better for me to die than to live. Jeremiah. Cursed be the day I was born. Why did I ever come out of the womb to see trouble and sorrow, and to end my days in shame? By the way, folks, what Joe read from Lamentations chapter 3, what Joe read to us today was significant in Jeremiah's life. He turned a corner, but read before those verses what he said about his life before he turned that corner. I mean, Jeremiah is a guy I relate to. They call him the weeping prophet. He was a sensitive bloke. He felt things and he wept continually. His soul was in such agony as a prophet to the nation of Israel. Listen to David, one of David's personal confessions. I'm in distress. My eyes grow weak with sorrow. My soul and body with grief. My life is consumed by anguish. My ears by groaning. Can you begin to see here that nowhere in the Bible does it suggest we not be real and honest about our emotions and our feelings and our experiences? Can you see that? It doesn't encourage a culture of covering things up and pretending. It encourages honesty, brutal honesty before God. Paul, of his personal experiences, we do not want you to be uninformed, brothers and sisters, about the troubles we experienced in the province of Asia. We were under great pressure, far beyond our ability to endure, so that we despaired of life itself. Do you know, folks, I've been to different church services and stuff where, and this is not a criticism, it's just an observation. It was very much a service where it was just the whole chest beating. Yeah, we have the victory, you know. And I remember in this one service where they were shouting out, we have the victory. Yes, we do. But I looked at them and I thought, that is fake. Because this is sometimes what the route is like to victory. These are sometimes the things we go through before we get there. And that has to be acknowledged. But then we have a more modern hero, Charles Spurgeon, incredible preacher, one of the greatest preachers the UK has ever known. Listen to what he said about his life. I have been brought very low. My flesh has been tortured with pain and my spirit has been prostrate with depression. Fits of depression come over the most of us. The strong are not always vigorous, the wise not always ready, the brave not always courageous, and the joyous not always happy. Isn't that amazing for a preacher who is followed by thousands? And he admitted that in his personal writings, how much he battled with depression. So folks, these stories that we read of in the Bible and in other stories that we read of, they tell us it's okay to struggle. And they tell us that it's okay to struggle very deeply and to hurt profoundly. That is okay. It's part of our human experience. And like I said, the Bible values honesty far ahead over performance. But now we're going to turn a corner, right? Okay, I said we would try and climb out of there. The Bible is a wonderful resource for emotional and mental health and for our struggles in life. That passage that Joe read to us, I'll read it to you. This was Jeremiah. He says, because of the Lord's great love, we're not consumed. For his compassions never fail. They new every morning. Great is your faithfulness. I say to myself, the Lord is my portion, therefore I will wait for him. The Lord is good to those whose hope is in him. Wonderful verses. The one I wanted to show you was Romans 8:28. It's a wonderful verse that says this. It says, we know that in all things God works for the good of those who love him, who have been called according to his purpose. Now, what that means for you and me in the suffering and pain we've been through, is that is the assurance that if we will, in faith, go God's way through that pain, He will make all that difficulty that you've experienced in your life actually work to your advantage, so that you come out a better person that you could never have been had you not faced that suffering in your life. That is what He's able to do. And I want to illustrate it this way, based on a quote. Charles Spurgeon said this: "Those who dive into the sea of affliction bring up rare pearls." Have a look at this picture of these pearls. I want to talk about how a pearl is formed. So pearls are greatly treasured by society, but on the left side there, a pearl begins as an injury to an oyster. A grain of sand gets into the oyster's shell, wounds it, afflicts it, causes pain and inflammation. The oyster couldn't pretend the pain wasn't there. That oyster was formed because the pain remained and did not go away. So layer after layer, the oyster had to try and put something around that grain of sand to stop the pain and the irritation and the inflammation. Layer after layer, what caused agony began to be wrapped in something beautiful. Not overnight, not without time, and it was all done in the dark where no one could see. But the miracle was happening in the dark. And that is a lot like our lives. God reaches into places that no one else sees, to the depths of our sorrows and disappointments and hurts. He sees every bleeding and wounded soul, and He gathers all those broken pieces and He works to make something beautiful out of the pain that we have experienced and felt. Layer upon layer of His grace, He slowly transforms our lives into something beautiful. He never called the pain, didn't tell you the pain wasn't there, didn't ask you to deny it, He didn't ask you to call evil good. Just covers it layer by layer until something beautiful has come out of that injury. And folks, the truth is, and this has been our personal experience, some of the most radiant Christians you'll ever know are those who have been to the depths of personal struggle, and God has met them in that pain and done something wonderful in their lives. That's the reality. So there is no shame to you struggling. There's no shame to you feeling hurt. There's no shame to you feeling sorrowful, hopeless, despairing. I was there a few Sundays back myself, and there is no shame in that. It's part of our human story. Amen? It is part of our human story. So folks, no one is suggesting that those seasons are easy. No one is saying that we can get through them readily. We can't. They're difficult. And it's complicated. Your individual pain might be different to mine. What was peculiar for you may not be peculiar to me. God works in us all individually. But I want to pick on one subject that I think we need to have a clear understanding of, because this is one of the factors that factors in when you and I are hurting and in trouble. The thing that I want to talk about is our spiritual adversary. There is a devil. There are demons in our world, and they seek opportunity in our pain and vulnerability to bring damage into our lives. It's one of the factors. It's not the whole picture. It's one of the factors. And we need to be aware of how that works, how he gets into our lives, and what we can do about it. So I tell you what I've called my message this morning, folks. I've called my message, How the Enemy Gets In and How to Get Free. Because the times we are most vulnerable are often the time he runs riot in our lives. So that's the subject I want to talk about today, just to give an overview of how this whole spiritual realm works and how he can get access into our lives. And of course, we know that his intention is always destruction. He's always to steal from us, steal our faith from us, steal our hope, steal whatever he can from us, to ruin our lives, break our lives, destroy them if he possibly can. And that's always his strategy. So folks, I'm going to... Can I share a bit of a personal story here with you? I'm going to be using, as you've noticed, a lot of graphics. So a lot of what I want to say is going to be on a graphic. Do you know what happened? So I was preparing on Friday, and I'm finding how to generate these graphics that I want for my sermon. They're all AI generated, and I've got really encouraged by this. And Friday I was cracking along, and I ended up with a whole pile of these, and I thought, I don't know if I'm going overboard. Do you know what happened? Yesterday I ended up in a hospital. I was strimming in the garden without protective glasses on, and the strimmer flicked up a stone and straight in my eye. It was extremely sore. Anyway, I cracked on for another 2 hours thinking it'll go away. It didn't. And by the time I went inside and wailed for Hazel, washed my eye out. The vision in that eye was completely blurred. I couldn't see out of it. It was intolerable. So I went to Specs, and they sent me straight away to Air Hospital. And long story short, it was agonizing. The only way I could stop the pain was to shut my eyes and just not open them. So I went to bed last night knowing I'm preaching this morning, not being able to open any eyes and not being able to see out one of them. And I thought, dear God, tomorrow's going to be a disaster. Anyway, thankfully, I've got pictures I can see clearly in my notes here. Even if I can't see the small print, I can see the pictures. I'm bouncing off the pictures this morning. Okay. So we went to bed last night, and I said to Hazel before we went to sleep, I said, please put your hand on my eye and pray for me. So she prayed for me last night, and I woke up this morning, I could open my eye. So my eyes opened this morning, okay, so huge improvement. Thanks to God I was able to do that. So I am bouncing off a lot of these pictures. Okay, have a look at this picture. We need to understand the battle for your soul. All right, so this is the way things work, all right, spiritually in our lives. We are three parts. We're a spirit, we're a soul, and we're a body. If you had to try and figure out which area is sensitive or vulnerable to which areas of the spirit realm, our spirit, which is God-given to us, is the part that God communicates through. He communicates through our faith, through our conscience, and through our spirit. We can sense him, feel him. The devil, on the other side, he comes through our bodily avenue. He comes through our senses, what we think, what we see, what we can feel, what we can touch. He works through our bodily desires, our ambitions, and all those things. That's where his gate is, that he tries to get in. But in the middle of us is our soul, our mind, our will, and emotions. That's the process part of our lives where we think, we reason, we make choices and decisions, and then where we then act out those things. So the battleground for your life is your soul. You have God trying to influence you on one hand, you have the devil trying to influence you on the other, and the battle is in your mind, your will, your feelings, your emotions. That's where the battle takes place. Now, folks, I'm going to just throw out a statement here. Have a look at that statement at the bottom of that picture. This is critical to stay balanced in a topic when you start talking about the devil and demons. Okay? That statement says this: nothing pertaining to man, nothing pertaining to your life, can be accomplished without the consent of your will. God will not violate your will, and the devil cannot. So there's never a time where you can stand up and say, the devil made me. You can never say that, right? If he influenced you and you did it, it's because you chose to listen to him and you chose to do it. You are responsible, not the devil. The only power he has is influence. If you go his way, it's because you chose, you consented and went his way. So God will not violate your will. If you want to go to hell, he'll let you. He'll always work on reasoning with you. Okay, and the devil cannot. manipulate your will. He can only seek to influence you. All right. So that is a serious, important balance that we need to know in this whole thing. Some people, I think probably those of you that have been Christians for a while, have seen the terrible extremes that exist. Some people see a demon behind every bush, Someone who gets angry, a demon of anger. You smoke, you got a demon of nicotine, and they blame the demons for everything. Okay, that is not right and not healthy. Okay. The Bible continually holds mankind, you and me, responsible for our behavior, regardless of the circumstances that influenced us. We are responsible for our behavior. Always. Okay, so we've got to be careful there. So how does he get access to our lives and the lives of other people? Have a look at this next picture. He's an opportunist. He has to look for opportunity. And I've listed some of the major ones. It may not be exhausted, but I'm just going to talk through some of them, okay? One of his chief methods he uses is lies. He'll say something that sounds reasonable. He'll make it sound like it's true, but it's a lie. And if you believe the lie is true, he's got you. No drama, no trying to chop your head off, no violence, just a gentle whisper in your ear of something that's not true, saying it as if it is true. How many of you have been there in your life? Yeah, folks, I'm telling you. I've told this story before. As a kid, I could only have been about 10. We were in a public swimming pool with friends. And I remember going under the water, putting my hands around my neck, and saying to myself, you're a bad person, you deserve to die. How does a 10-year-old come up with that? Once I became a Christian, I started looking back on these things, and I thought, I smell a rat. I smell a rat. Okay. Second one, ignorance. You don't even think he exists. He's just some comic figure in a cartoon book. You don't have a standard of right and wrong. So when you go and play in his playground thinking he's not even in the playground, you wonder why you get hurt. Ignorance. We cannot be ignorant. We've got to read that Bible. Pick it up and read it. It's true. Sin. So all sin, whether it be willful, I know I'm doing wrong, or in ignorance, provides some kind of opportunity for him to gain some kind of access into our lives. Have a look at this verse, Ephesians 4:26-27. It's amazing how Paul worded this, addressing a congregation. There must have been some anger issues going on in the church, conflict of some kind. He said this, in your anger, do not sin. Do not let the sun go down while you are still angry, and don't give the devil a foothold. So folks, what is a foothold? Foothold is just you've got your foot in the door so that the door can't be shut now. You're not screaming in anyone's face. You're not bellowing. You're not threatening, blackmailing. You just got your foot in the door. Now the door can't be shut. See, that's what he looks for. It's just those opportunities. All right, let's go back to the picture. Okay, so any kind of sin, if we don't deal with it, and if we persist in it, can be an opportunity for him to access our lives. Occultic involvement. We toy with this in our culture. It is extremely dangerous. There are many, many occultic practices we should not be involved in. You go to Deuteronomy and it lists them. Spiritualism, don't get involved with. Consulting the dead, don't get involved with. Ouija boards, don't get involved with. Tarot cards, don't get involved with. Witch doctors, don't get involved with. Any kind of spiritualism, don't get involved with. It's because it's real. It's not fake, it's real, but it's the wrong territory. And that can open a door. Hazel and I have seen that on so many occasions. I've shared a story before of someone I met about a year ago who couldn't figure out what was wrong with them, didn't know them. And finally they admitted they'd got involved with this occultic stuff. So we were in a public place and I said, well, let's go outside and I'll pray for you. And the moment I began to pray for them, their face began distorting, and it was clear there was some demonic activity going on there. Just comes in. That's what happens. But sometimes another one is trauma. When you are at your most vulnerable, when all your natural capacity to take action and deal with things is somehow paralyzed, because that's what trauma is. They say that trauma occurs in a person's life when they're not able to take some action. So if you were being chased by a lion and you ran and climbed a tree and escaped, you don't develop trauma. But if you were chased by a lion and you were paralyzed and couldn't take action, you develop trauma. And your whole soul is just unraveled by the enormity of what you're facing. In those vulnerable moments, the devil can seek opportunity by lying to us, taking advantage. So any kind of deep emotional distress he can take advantage of. And the last one is assault upon the innocent, tragically. Tragically, when the devil has access to certain people's lives, he can use those people to inflict damage on innocent people. We read in the news what happens to children. And a lot of that is demonically inspired. He has access to one, and he can assault an innocent person who has not opened the door, but he can assault them through the actions of another person. And folks, I just want to throw this out there. Do you know, tragically, one of the worst problems we're facing in society today is the abdication of parenting. Parents have to protect their children. That is their duty. They have to instruct them. They have to protect them. They have to care for them to prevent those kind of things happening. And when parents abdicate that responsibility, then the child has no protection over their life and they're vulnerable. So if we're going to deal with anything in our nation, we need to go back to the drawing board and address parenting. It's the only thing really that's going to solve so many of our social problems in society. All right, so he's an opportunist. And through these opportunities, he can make an assault on us. He can make some kind of attack. Okay. So let's just talk about how that progresses then. All right. So have a look at this next picture. Okay. I've kind of broken it up into 4 categories of where we can head when we have spiritual problems, right? So at the first level, it's an attack. We are either vulnerable, or it could be we've sinned, or ignorance. It could be anything like those things that we've discussed. And he makes an assault. Most of those are not dramatic. They're not overt. They're quiet, subtle. He'll whisper a lie in our head. It will be a temptation. This will be cool. Or it will be a scheme or a strategy of some kind, or a disguise. A lot of it is not overly evil that you would think, not overly dramatic. Could be just through gradual influence of us believing lies. Sometimes it can be a violent assault. These irrational feelings you start feeling, this sudden fear and anxiety out of nowhere. Where does that come from? These intruding thoughts in your head, where did that come from? The pressure or force to act immediately. You've got to do something, and you're under pressure to act, and you're being coerced. Sometimes it's just our brain is completely paralyzed and confused. Those are the pressurizing times he tries to hammer on us to get a foothold. So how does a foothold work then? How does a foothold occur in your life where he does suddenly now have some kind of opportunity? Well, it only occurs when we consent in some way to what he has whispered or suggested. Comes through our consent. We've believed it. In some way we've consented to the thing, and now he has opportunity. So examples. You've believed the lie. You chose bitterness instead of forgiving. You embraced the fear, the shame. You just keep giving way to temptation. It becomes a pattern. You make rash vows. I'm never going to trust anyone again. Relating to people, relating to the wrong people. So once that foothold is in, if he can drive that and keep it going, he can reinforce that and make it stronger and stronger in your life until it becomes an oppressive thing for you. So have a look at this definition of oppression. Okay, put up a definition of oppression. Sustained activity of Satan or demonic powers. This is the definition: that burdens, harasses, discourages, deceives, and influences a person so that their faith is weakened, obedience is hindered, freedom is diminished, fellowship with God and his people is disrupted, and they're unable to break free. Okay, that's what oppression is. It's when you're struggling with something like that and you cannot break it off you. Let's just go back to the previous picture. We'll finish off there. Okay. So examples of oppression are things like irrational fear, persistent anxiety, ongoing condemnation and shame, mental torment, emotional heaviness, loss of peace, recurring temptations, constant accusations in your head, discouragement, despair, hopelessness, heaviness. That could be a sign that he's really on your case. The last level, which we have to be open to in our society, because we were very open to it and saw a lot of evidence of it in Africa, it has to be in our society too, is possession. So possession, and there are stories of it in the Bible, is when someone has some kind of evil, demonic presence resident within them that largely controls most of their actions. And there's some brilliant stories in the Bible of people who've been in that place. How that happens, there's only one way it can possibly happen, and that is by a willful, deliberate surrender to those spirit beings and an invitation to them to in some way come in. If you're ever worried that you might be demon-possessed, you're not, okay? Because if you were, you would know it. Everyone we've encountered that's ever been there, they've always known there was something in there, all right? So that's where that can end up, and you can read the Gospels as to, what that is like for people in that position. So largely the territory that you and I are facing in our lives, folks, is attacks and oppression. We can at any point in our lives be in one of those two areas. So what can we do? Have a look at this next picture. I've listed 4 things that are incredibly helpful for us finding our way out of difficult, dark experiences where the devil is involved. Okay, number 1, find the truth. Jesus said, to the Jews who had believed him, Jesus said, if you hold to my teaching, you're really my disciples, then you will know the truth, and the truth will set you free. See, all it takes in a difficult and dark season in your life, when you're being harassed, all it takes is for the truth to be spoken about what's really going on in your life, for the power of that thing to be broken by the truth. All it takes is for somehow, some way, God to speak the truth into your circumstance for that thing to be broken. How many of you were here a couple of Sundays back when you all prayed for me when I had a meltdown? You've no idea the breakthrough I had after that. It's been incredible. The next morning, what I had been struggling with was gone. And it was triggered by all these things. Prophetic words came. Don't be dismayed. I was dismayed. God is not a God who disappoints. I was disappointed. See, that was the truth. Lorraine brought a word. So the truth, that's why you need to read the Bible, folks. I'm telling you, you need to read that book. So anything that will dispel the lies that the devil will try and feed you with, all right? Second one, prophetic words. We've just described that. Do you know, folks, I want to talk to you about prophecy, all right? We're a Pentecostal church. We believe in the gifts of the Holy Spirit that were founded in the early church. Prophecy is incredibly important. Prophecy can be two things. Number one, it can be predicting the future. But more generally, it is a word spoken from the mind of God for someone at that moment concerning their life in order to encourage them. It's a personal word from God to an individual. And all of us should be open. If God ever gives us something for a person to encourage them, we should be willing to go to them and say, look, I don't know if I'm right or wrong, say it humbly, but I feel like God was saying this, and see if it encourages them. I can't tell you how important prophecy is. How important those personal words from God to you can break you free of things. We've had so many experiences in our lives of just enormous strength that comes from a personal word from God. I think I've told you, if you've not heard the story, in our early years here, it was a huge struggle for me. And we went to a meeting at the coast, and there was a woman from America preaching. And when Hazel and I slunk in at the back and sat on the back row like we weren't Christians, like just don't anyone notice we're here. And the woman stood up, and she'd only been going a minute or two, and she stopped and she said, you there, stand up. So, okay, so, yes, you, stand up. So I stood up, and she says, I have a word from God for you. He says, stay at your post. That was a word from God. She had no idea. I was trying to run. It breaks something when those things happen. Jesus said, it's written, man must not live on bread alone, but on every word that comes from the mouth of God continually to your life. We need to somehow be continually receiving God's counsel into our lives in all the circumstances we face. And prophecy is so important in that. Third one, submit. Okay, if ever you're being harassed, you have to come under God's authority. Okay, so you have to submit to Him. You have to repent if you've been doing something wrong. Get back to God and then resist. You have to put your will into place and resist. However you want to do that, yell, scream, shout, tell Him to get lost. It really doesn't matter what you do as long as you're putting your will into place and resisting what He's doing. Activate your will and say something to resist what He's doing in your life. And lastly, do you know the staggering thing you find in the Bible was how those early writers continually said to Christians, pray for one another. Keep praying for the saints. And Paul, he was this colossal figure storming around Europe spreading the gospel, right? And do you know how often he said, pray for me, pray for me, pray for me. Why? Because prayer breaks things. Do you know, I don't know where it is, somewhere in the Old Testament it says 1 can put 1,000 to flight and 2 can put 10,000 to flight. See, when you all prayed for me, the next morning I woke up, no hopelessness, no despair, and no discouragement. Those were the things I couldn't get past. Hopelessness, despair, and discouragement. I could not get past them. And it was gone. That was demonic. So folks, do you know what, as a culture, as a church, and amongst each other, do you know what healthy would look like? Us being able to say, please pray for me, I'm struggling. And have some people gather around to pray for you. That is healthy. Openness, honesty, praying for one another. Amen. And then remember all those songs Lorraine brought to us today. Every one of them spoke about the difficulties, the struggles we face in life, and the faithfulness of God comes through. Always. The faithfulness of God. Doesn't mean we don't have the pain. It doesn't mean the pain just disappears, but God comes through for us when we're in pain. But these are things that we can do. Amen.